She was called a pest, a terrible woman, and one of the most violent and incorrigible souls in all of London. Her name alone could make a constable's stomach tighten. To the police, she was chaos in human form. To her neighbors, a living storm. Yet beneath the headlines and the shouting matches, Bessie Moncrieff's story was not just one of rage. It was one of heartbreak, defiance, and survival in a world that had no place for women like her. The newspapers chronicled her life like episodes in a grim Victorian drama. She struck constables in the face with her fists, smashed police station windows with her bare hands, and once set fire to her own prison bedding. She was a one-woman riot, feared and pitted in equal measure. But who was she before London consumed her? The records offer only fleeting glimpses of her past. One recurring note among the endless reports of drunkenness and despair: she had a good home in Cornwall. Time and again, friends, family, and even the authorities sent her back there. But Cornwall, that quiet place of cliffs and sea, could never hold her for long. The pull of London, the drink, the streets, the wild freedom always dragged her back. Her public downfall began in the autumn of 1882. It was late at night at the Yorkshire Grey Public House in Piccadilly when a young woman, 25 years old and already infamous, was thrown out for causing a disturbance. The constable who arrested her described her as drunk and disorderly, but when he left her alone for a moment in the station, she tied a scarf around her neck and nearly took her own life. It was the first recorded attempt in a long, tragic pattern. When brought before the magistrate, she apologized softly. "I am very sorry for what occurred, but the court had heard it all before." Even then, the inspector called her one of the most troublesome women the police had to deal with. A few months later, she appeared again in court, this time dressed neatly, described as respectably dressed, a coded phrase meaning she wasn't a common prostitute. She was accused of fighting with police officers in Chelsea. Bessie denied it, claiming she'd been framed by men she had reported earlier. Then she handed the magistrate a letter from her parents, pleading for her to come home. The judge paused, softened, and remarked that it was a very nice letter indeed. He didn't send her to prison that day. Instead, he gave her another chance, remanding her so that a chaplain could find her a place in a home. For a moment, hope flickered, but Bessie was already caught in the undertow. 2 years later, she was back in the cells, arrested again for drunkenness, again for violence, and again for trying to end her life. In one report, she was found in her cell with a handkerchief tied so tightly around her neck that she was nearly black in the face. When revived, she spat defiance. "I'll do it again, even if I have to tear up my clothes to do it." To the magistrate, she admitted, "I have recently taken to drink, and I've been driven to it by a man." For a time, she was sent to a charitable home, one of those moral rescue houses meant to reform women through religion and strict discipline. She went willingly. Perhaps she even wanted a change. But by the next year, she was back in the dock. It was September 1885 when she entered the Feathers public house on Great Chapel Street. Sober at first, she drank herself into fury, shouting obscenities at the landlord and his wife. When they threw her out, she returned and smashed a pane of expensive glass with her umbrella. The prosecutor called her a pest to the neighborhood. Bessie, weary and desperate, protested, "Everyone takes advantage of me. I have a good home in Cornwall. If you let me go, I'll leave London for good." But mercy had run out. The magistrate sentenced her to 6 weeks of hard labor. The record noted grimly that she'd already been convicted 18 times in that same court. The cycle was complete. Drink, arrest, despair, and prison repeated over and over until her name became a fixture in the police blotters. By 1887, she was 28, still young, still beautiful, and still battling the same demons. One day, she was dragged drunk from Westminster Police Court itself. Outside, she screamed at the officers, hurling insults as a crowd of 50 people gathered to watch. That was Bessie Moncrieff, both victim and villain, feared and forgotten. She was the product of a world that punished the poor, pathologized women's emotions, and mistook desperation for defiance. Her story, buried in the dusty pages of Victorian newspapers, is more than a chronicle of crime. It's the story of a woman fighting, in every sense, against the cage she was born into. Bessie Moncrieff's life unfolded as a relentless cycle of violence, defiance, and despair within the unforgiving machinery of Victorian justice. Her name first appeared in police records for acts of drunkenness and disorderly conduct offenses that would become a pattern repeated dozens and eventually hundreds of times throughout her turbulent life. During one of her earliest recorded incidents, Bessie became so violent that the constable had to take her into custody by force. When brought before the magistrate, she struck the officer in the face, earning herself another conviction. Asked if it hurt, the constable replied that it was as violent a blow as she could manage. Bessie, unrepentant, shouted, "I wish I had hurt you a bit more." The courtroom gasped. Officials noted she had already been charged 27 times for similar offenses and had twice been sent to reform homes, only to escape after a few days. Her sentences often included months of hard labor, yet no imprisonment seemed to deter her. On one occasion, when told she would serve another 3 months, she clutched the dock in fury and had to be dragged from the courtroom, cursing and fighting. In July 1887, she was again arrested after screaming "Police! Murder!" in the streets of Marylebone. Claiming to have been robbed by a gentleman who lured her into a cab, her story was dismissed when officers found her drunk and abusive. The court fined her 5 shillings for drunkenness, and her sarcastic "thank you very much" drew laughter from the gallery, a bitter reminder of how women like her were mocked rather than helped. By 1888, her age was being inconsistently reported in the press, varying between 28 and 36, but her behavior remained the same. She was often found drunk, shouting obscenities, or fighting police officers in the West End. Her name became infamous across London's courts, her temper described as ungovernable, her presence always followed by violence and outrage. In one memorable scene, after smashing windows at the police station, she raved at witnesses in court until officers were forced to restrain her. When sentenced to another month's hard labor, she shouted that she wanted nothing less and that she would smash everything once back in prison. By 1889, Bessie's notoriety had spread through the newspapers. They described her as a tall, handsome woman, fashionably dressed but uncontrollable. That year, she was tried by a jury for theft and for assaulting a female searcher at a police station, an offense considered serious at the time. Though she claimed innocence, insisting she had never stolen so much as a needle full of cotton, the jury convicted her. As she was led away, she sneered at them. "I hope you'll sleep well in your beds after finding an innocent woman guilty. Good day." Her defiance became her trademark. Even as her sentences grew longer, Bessie refused to bow to authority. In 1889, she attacked a gentleman in Knightsbridge, boasting, "Take that, I am Bessie Moncrieff." When restrained, she fought with such ferocity that police had to strap her to an ambulance. Later, she told the court she had just been released from Hanwell Asylum and had spent months in prison and other asylums. The magistrate called her a terrible woman, sentencing her to 6 weeks hard labor. Her reply, "I can do 6 weeks on my head," was both bitter and proud. The 1890s brought no change. Arrested repeatedly in Hyde Park and Kensington, she was described as violently abusive, biting officers, tearing her clothes, and shouting through the night in police cells. Each court appearance followed the same tragic pattern. She begged for mercy, promised reform, and erupted into fury when denied. Salvation Army missionaries offered her shelter if she signed herself into a home for habitual drunkards. Each time she refused. "I decline everything," she shouted. "What next would you like?" The result was always the same. Another month of hard labor, another public spectacle. By the mid-1890s, her convictions reportedly exceeded 100. She resisted arrest so violently that jailers often had to drag her from the dock. At one hearing, after being sentenced to a month's imprisonment and 6 months of good behavior surety, she clung to the dock rail, screaming and cursing as officers pulled her away. When released, she would be arrested again within days. Police and magistrates began to speak of her as incorrigible. Courts debated whether her problem was crime or disease. When accused again in 1891, she shouted across the courtroom, "I glory in getting drunk. If I could get 4 bottles of brandy, I'd drink the lot and settle myself this very day." In 1899, even the magistrates admitted defeat. Bessie was charged with smashing a pub's glass panel in revenge for being refused service. "If I can't have a drink, I'll have revenge," she said. Ordered to pay for the damage or serve a month in prison, she laughed bitterly. The same year, she was nearly discharged altogether because no asylum or reformatory would take her. "I don't know what to do with you," the magistrate confessed. "Go away and take your chance, but don't come back." In 1903, a police register finally recorded her physical description. Fair-haired, blue-eyed, 5'1", with scars under her left eye and on her neck. By then, she had been arrested around 200 times. The following year, she was sent to the South County's inebriate reformatory after every other home refused her, her record deemed too violent and her reputation beyond redemption. A curious detail appeared in the report. Bessie claimed to be the wife of a former member of Parliament and army captain. No evidence supported this, but the claim revealed her desperate need to be seen as something more than what society had made her. Her confinement under the Inebriates Act lasted years, but by 1912 she was back on the streets. Arrested once again for disorderly conduct, she spat in an officer's face and attacked him with a hatpin. The judge fined her 40 shillings or a month in prison. As the years passed, age and poverty took their toll. By the 1920s, she was described as an old woman haunting Hyde Park, drinking methylated spirits with other destitute souls. In 1922, she was sentenced to a month's hard labor for drunkenness. In 1925, at the age of 57, she appeared one last time in court and was fined £1 for being drunk and incapable. The newspapers claimed, perhaps with exaggeration, that she had 400 convictions. After that, she disappeared from record, leaving behind a legacy both tragic and haunting. Bessie Moncrieff was not merely a terrible woman, as newspapers branded her, but the living embodiment of a system that punished without healing, that confined but never cared. Her defiance, her outbursts, and her endless returns to the dock were cries against a society unprepared to understand addiction, trauma, or mental illness. Born in Cornwall around 1858, she spent her life battling the streets of London, an endless struggle between punishment and survival. Her story is more than a tale of crime. It is a mirror of Victorian hypocrisy and the suffering of women lost in its cracks. Bessie Moncrieff died as she lived, defiant, broken, and unforgettable.